Hey, thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. To unlock the extended, ad-free, full episode, sign up at patreon.com/thecreateunknown. Now on with the show.
Can you stop? Do you think you could stop?
This episode is brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/thecreateunknown to get a free audiobook, and stay tuned for my book recommendation. That's audibletrial.com/thecreateunknown. Now on to the show. Hey, welcome to The Create Unknown. I am Kevin Lieber. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor, and we're bringing something back. And that thing that we're bringing back is this. Matt, tell me something.
This one is a two-parter, okay? First, I've been working behind your back.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Shady.
I've done something that you don't know about. I procured a sponsor for The Create Unknown, and that sponsor is Eagle brand Sardines. The Create Unknown is sponsored by Eagle brand Sardines now.
What is that? And how is that possible? And am I going to have to do ad reads for Sardines now?
Maybe, but it's possible because I just decided to do it. They've been out of business for a while. So what I'm going to tell
So it's really more like a charity to something that doesn't exist, more so than a brand deal that will help the podcast at all.
Yeah, that's right. So the last U.S. sardine cannery went out of business in 2010. That was owned by Bumblebee. It was in Maine. Maine for years, and peaking in the 50s, was a sardine haven. There were 50 canneries of sardines back in that era. But regulations on the fishing of herring made it tougher to produce sardines. And so the companies started to shift and shut down, things like that. But Eagle brand was the first one that opened in the 1800s. So anyway, I was out shopping for the patrons on Patreon, and I came across this big thing of Eagle brand patches. I'm like, oh, this is pretty rad. These are old. Eagle hasn't been around in a long time. So I'm like, okay, now they're the official sardine of The Create Unknown.
But did you know? Wait. Did you know about Eagle brand sardines before you saw these patches?
Yeah, I knew they existed.
How?
I knew the company existed. My dad used to eat sardines.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was like the can in the cupboard that I never touched. I looked at it, I'm like, oh, that's what we're going to have to eat when World War III hits and there's no more food. That'll be the last thing you eat before you start looking at the dog and cat funny.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I'd heard of it. But then I started reading up again on sardines, and I was thinking about what Destin told us about the woman with plucking the mistake ho-hos or Little Debbies
off the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so on the last day of the last cannery being open, these two women packed 5,200 cans of sardines in 195 minutes. That's flying. I mean, that's a lot of sardine packing in 3 hours.
Wait, why did they do that so quickly just to get them out?
They were paid a base rate and then based on productivity. So kind of like getting a wage as a server and then getting tips on top. So the more sardines you packed, the more money you made per hour.
Right. I've watched a little bit of Undercover Boss, and a lot of the factories work that way. Yeah, you get productivity bonuses, so you try to get things done as quickly as possible. I want to talk more about sardines now, though, because my grandpa liked sardines, and that was it. That was not like a delicacy that was passed down to my father, and it ended with my grandpa. And it sounds like it ended with everybody's grandpa. Like, why was sardines a thing, and why is it no longer a thing is my new question.
Well, they were really cheap. I mean, I remember them being on sale for like, you know, like two or three cans for $1 when it was really good. And I bought some a couple months ago because I wanted to see if my cat would eat sardines. And it was like $1.89 for a can at Walmart. So like I should have invested in sardines when the price was still low. But now we have a sardine, an official sardine of the Create Unknown. And you say that you want to keep talking about sardines. Everybody does.
Everybody wants to talk about
sardines until the end of time. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we talk about in the Discord. Like we had like a good hour with like a dozen people talking about weird food, old food, like the oldest thing that they'd ever eaten. What's the oldest thing that you've ever eaten?
In the Discord, you like glitch there for a second, like Max Headroom a little bit. So you've been talking about sardines in the Discord, or just weird food?
Yeah,
all of it. Weird food, the oldest thing that you've ever eaten. The hottest thing. Like there's a hot sauce discussion and like whether some of the metrics on hotness are valid. Like we really got into food science, which was pretty cool. But what's the oldest and weirdest thing that you've ever eaten? That's my question.
Oldest as in it's probably past its expiration and I shouldn't be eating it?
Yeah. Or if it was canned, I mean, the shelf life on that stuff is like decades. So you could eat something that was canned before you were born and it's going to be fine.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't recall ever eating anything that was oddly old. But I do want to ask you, did you eat any of the sardines that you bought for your cat or no? Because you weren't even like curious to try them because I don't know what they're like. I remember as a kid, was it the Ninja Turtles? But there always was this kind of meme or trope that like getting sardines on your pizza. Like now the meme is
the anchovies,
is pineapple. Oh, it's anchovies. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is just becoming like a small fish podcast. But what is the difference between anchovies and sardines? It's just a different fish.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's a regional thing or what. I mean, like I know that sardines are effectively attached to herring fishing. I'm not sure on anchovies, but I will find out.
That's how we'll start the next Tell Me Something is you discerning the difference and the intricacies of anchovies and sardines. Two things that I feel are very popular in pop culture as being like gross, stinky, nasty food. But I've never encountered them aside from, like I said, I remember as a kid, my grandpa eating them and my mom telling me like, ugh, like, Pop loves sardines on crackers, whatever it is, but it's really gross. I'm like, and now I want to try it, like genuinely.
They're really inelegant, like to eat. Watching somebody eat sardines is horrifying to me. Like it's, the comedy side of it is an old cartoon. Like, you remember Heathcliff and how he ate fish out of the garbage and stuff? And he'd like, drip the bone down or drip the fish down, like out comes the bone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like you don't even do that with sardines. You just eat the whole thing. Like Gollum eats fish, like raw fish, and eats the bones and stuff. Like that's who you are. When you eat sardines, you're basically like a higher functioning Gollum.
You eat the bones?
Yeah, I mean they're really little. They're like 2 inches long and super thin. So yeah, you just pop the whole thing in your mouth.
I'm going to buy some and I'm going to get some and I'm going to crack open the can and I'm going to eat one in an episode, in a future podcast. And we'll just go from there.
Do it.
Especially because now we're officially sponsored by Eagle Brand Sardines.
Right, yeah. Officially sponsored by a thing that went out of business, 9 years ago or whatever.
I don't know when Eagle went out, but the last one in the United States went out in 2010. Yeah. But this is what goes on in the Discord, is talking about this stuff. And by the way, I have a bunch of these. I have a bunch of these Eagle brand pieces of memorabilia. So if you want to join the Sardine Gang, anybody who signs up on Patreon will get. I will mail you an Eagle brand official TCU Sardine Gang patch. I have the North Lubeck, which is an offshoot of Eagle. Is that showing up? Oh yeah, good. North Lubeck sardines, the more traditional Eagle brand sardines patch. This is good stuff. You can't find this anywhere else.
Anyone, no matter what tier, that signs up is going to get a sardine patch.
I have enough to give every current patron, which is sizable. I have enough to give every current patron and a passel more. So yeah, I'll leave it to you to decide how many are in a passel.
So now we already have the baby gang. Now we have the Sardine Gang.
Well, the Sardine Gang is unofficial.
Okay.
You know, so it's like asking somebody if they went to like a music festival or something, like the way our parents like, oh, were you at Woodstock? Or now it's like, did you go to Burning Man or Coachella or something like that? It's sort of like that. It's like, hey, like, were you in the Patreon, like, to be part of the Sardine Gang? You know what? When these patches run out, you won't be. The door slams shut on Sardine Gang hard and fast.
Yeah.
There's only one way to get on the right side of that door and to live the sardine life.
Well, this is all news to me. I had no idea when I woke up this morning that I was going to commit to eating sardines and that I would somehow be involved in creating a sardine gang. So I'm really excited about both of those things. There are a few topics that I did plan on talking about. And the big topic that we want to get into is something that I've wanted to discuss for a really long time. And I don't know exactly how to boil it down into a sentence, but it's this idea of achieving success and what you do kind of once you get to the top of that mountain, whether you continue to grind when you continue to swing your pickaxe from side to side, you know, mining for diamonds, or you just lay back and chill and enjoy the fruits of your labor. And I think that we have a lot of examples, not only on YouTube, but just in celebrity, pop culture, etc., of people doing it different ways. And that really fascinates me as a part of just this podcast in general, exploring creativity and kind of what happens once you have sort of seen the peak of your goals and dreams and creative vision achieved. It's like, now what?
Yeah, I think it's that question of like, what do you do when you reach the top of Mount Everest? Like, oh, do you just like come back down? Like, you know, it's like in the South Park episode where they build up all the experience killing boars playing World of Warcraft, and then they eventually defeat the guy, and it's like, what do you want to do now? And they're like, oh, well now we can play the game. So there's an element of that where you reach a good point. Whatever that is, that point of success is, whether it's like really doing well or just being able to do this thing day after day. Do you orchestrate your climb back down the mountain? Do you just jump off the mountain? Do you camp out on top for a while? You know, what do you do? And I think people do it a lot of different ways.
Yeah. And the reason that it really popped up, well, it kind of like re-emerged in my consciousness because Nicki Minaj just recently tweeted that she's retiring to start a family, to focus on a family. Like, she is no longer going to make music or tour or music videos or do any of that stuff. She says she's done and she's going to have a family and she's going to focus on that and her personal life. And some of some of the response to that was really supportive, really happy for her, which personally I thought was nice to see. But some of it was really not. Some of it was really kind of like negative, like you're quitting sort of attitude. And that rubbed me the wrong way. And look, I don't know much about Nicki Minaj. It's not my thing.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
You don't believe me?
I don't. I think that the walls we can't see, we see one wall in this room you're in. The walls that we can't see, I think are Nicki Minaj posters, at least filling up one wall.
Do people still buy posters like that?
I don't know if they do, but I feel like you had them custom printed, like at Kinko's. Like you went there with a USB drive, a thumb drive, and you're like, here are my favorites. Make them as big and clear as you can because I have a wall to fill of Nicki Minaj because that's who I am.
Well, quick aside, it just reminded me when I was a kid a million years ago, and the internet was new. I was really excited about the fact that I could find pictures of Ken Griffey Jr. And print them at the school library. And then I could scotch tape these pictures of Ken Griffey Jr. to my notebooks. Like that is such a boomer thing thinking about it now. But at the time, literally I'm talking about dot matrix with the holes on the side and really loud printer. And just the concept of being able to look up pictures of your heroes and print them out and have them. Wow. That was exciting.
What everybody just heard from you is basically the same as if like a caveman came out of ice and he's like, let me tell you about the first time I realized I could take this brightly colored rock and scratch a painting in my head on the walls of my cave. You're like, oh, that's interesting, but that's very, very old and doesn't apply to my life anymore.
I love thinking about that stuff, though. I love thinking about like the first person to use an umbrella. You know what I mean? They're just like, wait, I don't have to get wet anymore. If I hold this thing over my head, that will stop the rain from falling on me. That seems like a big deal.
There had to be a first person to eat a sardine where they pull this little tiny fish out and they're like, this is too little for me to cook. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to swallow this whole raw and see what happens. Somebody did that. And then somebody else thought, oh, these are so good. How can I put 18 of these in a can so that I can carry them with me wherever I go in case I need a snack?
Everything comes back to sardines at some point.
Well, that's the deference that you have to give to your sponsor. And I know we promise patrons ad-free episodes, but you're never going to not hear about Eagle Brand.
No, you're never.
Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, I know. Now it's just everything is about Eagle Brand sardines.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say, though, back to your topic about the disappointment that people expressed and the criticism on Nicki Minaj retiring. That also was a big deal a couple weeks ago when Andrew Luck announced his retirement.
Oh,
and in that case, that was doubly nuts to me because he pretty much said, I've put in my time. My body is destroyed. I'm about to die. Do you mind if I go home and be able to live a normal life? Which it's one thing if it's a creative grind that's really wearing you out. And it's something else if you wake up and you're like an inch away from collapsing because your body doesn't work. You'd think it would be really easy to understand why he was doing this, but Twitter was full of people that's like, wow, you took your millions out of the NFL and left your team high and dry. You're the worst person alive. I'm like, okay.
I'm really glad you brought that up because that totally slipped my mind. That was really shocking because, yeah, you're talking about a guy who literally has been getting pummeled for a living for his entire adult life. And
for how many years before he was doing it for a living? Like he probably started playing football at 7 or something. And so he's been taking hits He took hits for 15 years before he even made $1 from it.
Yeah. Then meanwhile, somebody like, I think it was Doug Gottlieb, created some snarky tweet about it being like the most millennial thing ever, that he didn't want to like rehab anymore of his endless slew of, I'm sure, incredibly painful injuries that have, you know, a normal average person suffered one of them. You know, I can't even imagine the amount of rehab that guy has gone through. But you're right. So there's this dynamic.
I think the disappointment and the criticism is the same between those two, though, whether it's a sports thing or whether it's Nicki Minaj just saying, I've done my creative thing, I need to stop that, at least for a while.
Well, that was the first thing that I wanted to ask you, because when is it enough? At some point, and maybe it's never enough to a lot of people, but at some point, at least from my perspective, I look at somebody like Andrew Luck or Nicki Minaj and I say, you've given millions of people a lot of value and a lot of enjoyment and a lot of happiness. I'm sure like Nicki's music has gotten millions of people through like a lot of, you know, tough situations or helped them come to terms with whatever it is. You know, music has really profound effect on people. And same thing with Andrew Luck, just giving people just sheer entertainment for years and years and years, giving up his body, sacrificing his physical health. I mean, we don't even need to get into the brain damage that these football players are going through with this CTE, where
the non-damage. No, sorry, I thought you were done. The CTE.
Well, yeah, like CTE, we don't really even know anything about, other than it's just starting to rise to the surface that a lot of these football players are just straight up brain damaged for life just from playing football.
Even the non like the things that people don't think of as difficult are still a really difficult thing. So with athletes, you can't just eat what you want, for example. That actually completely sucks. It really sucks when you have to be active to a certain degree and you have to eat a certain diet. Like that's a major sacrifice to make that people take for granted. And I mean, if somebody says like, oh, if you can get $1 million contract or sell out shows the way Nicki Minaj does, or, you know, have the deals that she's got, and all you have to do is, you know, not eat trashy food. It doesn't sound like it's that hard, but that kind of thing completely wears on you after a while. And if anybody listening has done like any sports thing, especially, you know, they know what it's like when you're trying to keep in shape for something. Man, it sucks when you can't just like go to Taco Bell when you want. You can't just eat a pizza. You can't just eat a bunch of sardines. So it's really a thing. It's a thing that matters. And, you know, these people have put in a lot of time. So I don't particularly care whether Nicki Minaj continues to make music or not. That's not so much my thing, but I look at it and think she can do what she wants.
She definitely can do what she wants. The real quick, the thing about like not being able to eat what you want. I don't know why I remember this, but sometimes things just stick in your memory. And I think it was because it shocked me so much. Anyway, a long time ago, like in the 90s, Cindy Crawford went on the Rosie O'Donnell show, and Rosie O'Donnell had like a daytime talk show, you know, like Ellen or whatever. And on the Rosie O'Donnell show, you know, Rosie O'Donnell obviously is not somebody who is known for watching her weight. That wasn't part of her job. She's a comedian. Right. Okay. However, Cindy Crawford, I'm pretty sure it was Cindy Crawford, is somebody whose looks were her job. That's why she was famous. She was a supermodel. Anyway, Rosie O'Donnell tried to convince Cindy Crawford to eat a Twinkie on the show.
Okay.
One Twinkie. And it became this huge, I mean, I'm sure, look, the way that these shows go, they talk about this stuff beforehand. You know, it was part of the show, right? Like, I'm not naive to the fact that this was part of, of the show like that. But just the concept that Cindy Crawford would be freaking out that her personal trainer, I remember her saying this, like her personal trainer was going to get mad at her if she ate a single Twinkie, was shocking to me watching this for some reason. I don't know why I was watching this, but it just stuck in my memory though. Like, oh, these people whose job it is to look good, this is a daily concern of theirs to like literally not take a bite of cake because it could mess up, you know, your job. It could like ruin your career to eat a brownie. That's extreme. That's an extreme example. And it was for the show, obviously, but I think the principle remains the same. And it's what you're talking about.
I'm sure that she had a few of those things going on, in addition to just wanting to focus on a family life kind of thing. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that she just thought, hey, I've done well with this. I don't need to continue. But I wanted to ask you, what's something that you have had to sacrifice with the YouTube career that you've had? I mean, there's got to be something. There's got to be something that you wish you didn't have to do.
That's a really good question. I think that anyone who is working a lot on something sacrifices a lot of personal life elements. I certainly think that I could stand to spend a lot more time just with friends and family that I don't. Because every single day something seems to pop up where it's like, got to take care of this, got to do that. And I like all of those things. So I'm not complaining. But at the same time, like you asked, what is something that I sacrifice? And that is just kind of having the type of social life that I think a lot of people have. I mean, I recall, maybe I believe I've already told this story, but I think it exemplifies the point. Before I even started Vsauce, with Vsauce or doing YouTube full time, you know, and I was working at the chicken wing place, after work, everybody would go to the bar and they'd all hang out, you know, all night until the bar closed, you know, drinking and having a great time. And I wouldn't do that. I would go home after work and I'd be the only one who didn't go out. So, you know, the next time at work, maybe I would hear stories on like, oh, you know, you're not going to believe what Mark did, or this happened with Will and that sort of thing. And I'm like, that's really cool. But I really want to work on my potato cartoons or, you know, weird blog posts or animations or whatever it was. And that's a clear sacrifice because you have to extract yourself from the social pressure of like, hey, why are you so weird? Why don't you hang out with us? Like, honestly.
It makes sense, but that's one of those things that has to go is you know, you make choices about how to use your time on things. That's been for anybody who's in creative or any entrepreneurial kind of thing. Like, it's the same whether you're like inventing a better diaper. I mean, it's still the same kind of thing where you spend a tremendous amount of time on that for a really long time before anything even happens. And then if there is success on something, okay, great. You take all the work that you've been having, and then you like double, triple it, whatever. We've talked about this in the context of YouTube things where you grind and do this crazy amount of effort where you wake up and the first thing you do is look at your phone or something and, you know, see what happened while you were sleeping. Go through this crazy day where you hope you get time to eat at a reasonable hour. And then you do something useful at night until your eyes fall out, which yours almost did. So you do that day after day. And then when it finally hits for you, it's like, awesome. Let's take that process and turn it up to 11 because it wasn't hard enough already. And you may or may not have the resources to make it easier. Some people can hire out a bit so that they actually, as they succeed, they do less. Like, this is totally possible. But it depends on the resources you've got. It depends on the type of art creativity that you're doing. You know, I was talking to an anonymous YouTuber about this week. He makes videos that honestly nobody else could step in and do. He can't get help in the way somebody else could say, here, can you edit this for me? Or you deal with the audio. The way he does his videos, there's no replacement. There's no somebody serving the information on a platter so that he can pluck it in his own style. Like, no, this dude's just got to make his videos. There's no substitute. So not everybody can even get out of that grind and make it easier on themselves. And I can see somebody doing that for a long time in any field and just thinking, I've done all right, and it is time to move on, or at least not do this anymore.
And I think that's totally fair. That's what struck me with the Nicki Minaj situation, and what I respect about it, because it feels like at some point, and I guess Filthy Frank kind of folds into this discussion a little bit too.
Yeah.
But I wonder if at some point for creators, if they kind of feel like they've done the best version of their idea, then you either just kind of, and you were successful with it, because there's also that element where I think that you do keep trying new things until you're successful. But if you're successful with your idea, you know, you've done it to the best of your ability. Now what has got to creep into the back of your mind? I mean, I think that there are probably musicians and so forth that just kind of churn out the same thing, and it gets boring. And I don't think fans like that either. So it's this weird thing where, you know, like Seinfeld explicitly just stopped making that show. I think it was after 9 seasons.
Yeah.
Because he was like, it's done. Like, we're done with the show. Like, I think I recall him saying 10 seasons just sounds too long. And it's just like, he's like, he doesn't want it to have to go to 10 seasons. So he just stopped it, and it never got bad. It still holds up. It's still great. And since then, you know, Jerry has done his comedians in cars getting coffee, which is, you know, wildly successful, but at the same time kind of feels like a retirement project. You know what I mean? He's like, all right, I am a billionaire or whatever, multi-millionaire. I like cars and I love talking to comedians. So why don't I do this show? And I guess I like coffee a lot too. So why don't we just kind of combine those things, and this will give me something to do, so I'm not bored out of my mind because I'm a crazy, creative person. Yeah. But it gives me a project to work on that is really kind of like low risk and people like. So I think
David Letterman did the same thing.
Right.
Where he's like, oh, I don't want to do this nightly show until I'm dead. I've had a good run here. How about I have long form conversations with really cool people? It's a nice next step where that creativity gets channeled through. And I feel like that it's not a lot different than what we see with YouTube people. Like Shane Dawson went to long form stuff. He shifted up his style quite a lot. We've talked pretty recently about iDubbbz doing that too. I don't know for a fact, but I imagine somewhere in the back of his mind, he was like, oh, I probably don't want to open up packages of sex toys that these people send me and like the weirdest things they find on Amazon for the rest of my life. So he does fewer of those types of unboxing videos, right? And then all of a sudden he does this really deep, meaningful thing that's still really funny too. That's channeling that creativity. And I've seen you do it. I mean, you channeled it into this podcast, and it's not because you threw up your hands and you were done with Vsauce 2. It's just like, no, there's something else that isn't in the same line of content as Vsauce 2, but I still really want to do it. How do I channel that creativity in a way that will make me happy and keep me sane?
Yeah, I think one of the two main catalysts for doing this podcast are, one, I like talking to creative people. I guess the way that, Jerry Seinfeld likes to talk to comedians, I like to talk to YouTubers because they fascinate me, just like on a very primal level. Like, I think that being a YouTuber is weird, and everyone who does it is pretty unique, which I think that we've discovered in every episode that we've done so far, where everybody has a pretty unique outlook and process on how they ended up, making the videos that they make. And the other thing
we've talked to so many people in so many hours of it, and I cannot think of one single instance where somebody's described something about how they got to where they are or how they do what they do now. And I've thought, oh, okay. So we've heard that before. Like, it's not even close. And I think that we could do that for 100 more people before we get some overlap on some single tiny detail. Like, it will be as insignificant as somebody coming in saying, like, I've always been obsessed with Apple products. And we're like, oh, so same with Justine. Like, you have that in common. And then from there, the other 99.93% of the story is completely original. So yeah, it's always going to be totally unique. They're all unique snowflakes is what it comes down to.
That is what it comes down to. The other day I'm walking down the street and a whale comes up to me, and the whale goes, ooh, ooh. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand whale song. What exactly are you trying to get across with that weird sound? And it turned out the whale wanted me to get an audio book from Audible called Musicophilia by Oliver Sacks. And I said, well, listen, I've already read that book. I read Musicophilia for my video, What is Music? The video used to be called The Human Bridge of Musicality, if you remember that. But at some point I changed the titles because I wanted them to be like a more cohesive series. If you go to Vsauce 2, you'll know what I mean. It's called the Invention of series now. But look, Oliver Sacks, brilliant guy. Musicophilia is all about basically like people with brain conditions and how music affects their brain condition. And the whole point of it is that we learn a lot about the brain with how music affects these people. So you don't have to read it, though. You can just listen to it. If you go to audibletrial.com/thecreateunknown, you get a 30-day free trial. You get to keep the book, no questions asked. Nobody's going to drop a whale on you if you cancel. So go to audibletrial.com/thecreateunknown and check out Oliver Sacks. The guy's got a bunch of books that will make your brain smarter. And the other thing is I like the idea of learning from other creators, and then also hopefully people who are listening can also, glean some kind of lessons from the things that you and I talk about, but also the things that we learn from the guests. But going back to like the Nicki Minaj theme, I do want to mention Filthy Frank because his story fascinates me, where he could be doing Filthy Frank today and be wildly popular, no problem, like, absolutely no problem. Like he would be like funnier, and he would be doing more and more outrageous things. I mean, he'd be demonetized. Yes, he'd be totally demonetized. Yeah. Let's not, get that wrong. But nevertheless, I don't think he would care about that. if he were still interested in exploring that character and making those videos. And clearly he is not. What he wanted to do instead was launch a music career under a different name and do something that's just wildly different for really a whole new audience. I'm sure there's plenty of overlap where, you know, people enjoy Joji and they came over from Filthy Frank, but I got to imagine there is a large swath of Joji fans that either don't even know who Filthy Frank is, and if they did, you know, maybe they wouldn't be huge fans of that because they're so different.
That even happens with the Create Unknown. I mean, I talk to people in the Discord and can tell, like, they know that Vsauce exists, but they're not Vsauce fans. They're interested in the stuff that we talk about, and they talk about, you know, making podcasts and YouTube videos and things like that, but they're just not into science and math stuff. So it's really cool to see that, because the initial wave was people who wanted to listen to this show because they like listening to and watching Vsauce too. And then all of a sudden it started to exist on its own. They're not nearly as different, though, as what Filthy Frank has done with becoming Joji. Like, that really is like these are radically different paths. So, but it's still creative. It's still artistic. So it's not like he dropped everything to like knit sweaters full time,
Become a plumber
in an igloo. Yeah. So like it's in the same relative plane. So my question is, what is your Filthy Frank shift? What is your Joji? You yank the plug out of Vsauce 2 tomorrow. No, it should be more exciting than that. Michael and Jake know they threaten to kill you. The only way out of it is for you to quit Vsauce 2. So you have to do this or they will kill you. But you have all this all this creativity that's bursting. You've talked about what you would do if there was no YouTube. And it wasn't like a creativity artistic kind of thing. What's your Joji shift though?
I would work on stories.
Still in creativity.
I would write books.
Yeah.
I would definitely write books. You know, I started that process last summer. I got, 10 chapters of a novel down on paper.
Yeah.
But unfortunately that has just been shelved since then, but I'd love to get back into that and to finish that. And yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with stories and storytelling. And I would love to dive into that more. That would definitely be my Joji thing, is to be, I guess, a novelist. I've done music in the past, like I did have a band before YouTube even existed, and I wrote and performed songs a little bit, but I wouldn't do that.
I didn't know that you had a band.
I didn't know that you...
I knew that you did solo stuff. I didn't know that you had a band, though.
Oh, yeah.
What was your band called?
The band was called the Julius Orange, and it was...
Oh.
I thought that was you doing the instruments and like mixing the tracks.
Not by myself. I mean, I had Orion Palmer was the drummer and Brett Wilhelm was the bass player. It was a trio. And
I thought for like 15 years now, I've thought that you did each of those and then mixed them together. And I'm like, wow, this guy basically was doing everything on one album. No,
I'm not Trent Reznor. I don't know how to play the drums, and I'm not a competent.
That's honestly what I've been thinking forever.
No, we performed like live shows and stuff, but I couldn't go down that path because being a musician, maybe it's different today for like the Jojis of the world, where you can do a lot of stuff on your own and then kind of like release it to the internet, and then gain a following and do shows once you already have a following. But for 99.9% of bands, it's just an endless slog of touring and playing live shows and like driving around in a van, literally hoping that you sell a couple of t-shirts in, you know, South Bend, Indiana or whatever. You know what I mean? Right. That's not something that I wanted to do. Like, I didn't want to drive around in a van lugging equipment. So I didn't do that.
So there are a couple questions that go on top of what you've just been talking about. And you're a decent person to answer this because you're not too far from where some of these people are. Why do guys like Ninja or PewDiePie, who have a lot, like, you know, I don't know what their finances are. I don't know what their life is about, but we know that they're in a comfortable position. Okay. We know that they don't have to grind, you know, Monday through Friday to get a paycheck, like to keep the lights on. But they still keep going. Like, they make a lot of content. I forget the hours that Ninja streamed in 2018, you know, when that stat came out, but it was insane. It was like basically the number of hours that I'm awake in a year. So you get that. And then PewDiePie is just churning out stuff. Why do these people do it? Why does a Lily Singh, who has had a good career, why does she go on to, you know, do a daily or nightly show?
Well, first of all, I'm nowhere near PewDiePie or Ninja. Like, I'm not in that. We're not even in the same arena. Like, I'm in the other end of the parking lot in terms of my my financial situation from those guys. But
I want to interrupt you and just be clear that like 3% of this is financial to me. 97% is having attained this great success, you know. And so if you decided that you were done tomorrow, you could look back on the Vsauce 2 catalog and say, I did a lot of really good stuff that people liked for a lot of years. Like, I have achieved success on that, and absolutely nobody would have any grounds to criticize that. So, you know, so it's not just like a living comfortably thing. It's like, okay, I've made it. I've done my project. I've expressed my creativity in a positive way. Why do you keep going?
Well, I mean, I can't answer that for those guys, but I do wonder that about those guys. They're both a lot younger than I am, especially Ninja. So I think a lot of that is just that dude has got a motor and he likes streaming, and he's going to keep doing it because he's having fun doing it. And the fact that he can retire not only himself, but his entire family tomorrow, I guess just doesn't matter. It's not appealing to him. He doesn't want to retire. He doesn't want to sit on the beach all day and smoke cigars and sip Mai Tais. He wants to stream. So, and that's part of what has made him so successful, is that this guy is a machine who is endlessly, you know, churning out content that people enjoy. And same thing with PewDiePie. PewDiePie fascinates me in the regard that what will he do, you know, 5 years from now? Like, what is PewDiePie doing? Because I would have thought, honestly, that maybe he would have kind of scaled back the amount of content that he puts out by now. Because he certainly doesn't need the money, and he doesn't need people's, you know, adoration. I mean, he's gotten plenty, you know, by continuing to go, he's gotten a lot of people's ire for, you know, the missteps that he's fallen into over the years.
Yeah, there's certainly a stronger focus on the smaller elements of what he does. As he's continued to go, the scrutiny has just been like cranked up on him. And that's got to be really hard. Had he stopped a while ago, he would have avoided all of that stress. But you can tell that he's having a lot of fun with the content that he's doing. Like he seems, if he's faking it, it is the best deceit on all of YouTube. Because he seems like with the Minecraft stuff, that he's legitimately enjoying the things that he's making.
He has to be, because he doesn't have to do it. And that's like the point. Like he doesn't have to be doing this. He could just, buy his beachfront property and do nothing. But I don't think people can do nothing. I think what happens, one of the things I've always found really depressing are the musicians who kill themselves, and how many musicians that I grew up with that have killed themselves, from like the grunge era, from obviously Kurt Cobain, but also Chris Cornell and Lane Staley and Scott Weiland, who basically killed himself just through him treating his body like trash, treating himself like trash. That is another thing that I worry about, like not for myself, but I just worry about creative people, because I feel like there is that element, like you said at the beginning of this, of getting to the top of the mountain, looking around and seeing that there's nothing there. It's like you climbed this crazy Mount Everest, you're at the peak, and you're like, it's just emptiness. And then they fall into this trap of just feeling like there's nothing else around. And that's so depressing to me.
I want to float something here, because we have talked about it in the past. You and I personally have talked about this for a decade. Okay. And it is that notion of what Durkheim, the sociologist, called anomie. And it's a sense that, to sum it up on like a bumper sticker, anomie is not feeling like you have a place in the world. You look around at the world and you're like, oh, I don't fit. I can't process my existence because there's nowhere for me. And what we've talked about has been how creative people have an especially hard time with this. And if you think about what it means to be a creative, like by definition, you are making something that doesn't exist. That's why you're creating it, because it's not there. The musicians who don't wind up killing themselves, the ones who like cover pop songs on Friday nights at a local bar, those guys are happy because they don't have this tremendous pressure to release an album that they hope sells like the last one, or that they hope everyone will respect them for. Same with novelists, and say just any creative at all, by definition, doesn't fully fit with the world. And what they're doing is putting something new in the world that fits other people, or that people will look at and say like, oh, okay, this is a new thing that we want to fit with. That can go really badly. And even when it goes really well, it is hard. It is hard as hell. So you do get these people who are on the top of the world who don't feel great about themselves or their life. And we talk about the ultimate difficulties when it's a Kurt Cobain type, but most of the time it's feeling, depression or something like that, which is a life ruining thing. That's hard enough. That's the plight of the creative, though, is balancing out not fitting with the world, and then making something that does fit with the world.
Right.
It's the weirdest juggling act ever.
It really is. And some people can't handle it after a while. And that's a lesson that I've just learned over the years of people who are successful. Look at Anthony Bourdain. Like, Anthony Bourdain could not have been more successful. He got to travel all around the world to the most amazing restaurants in the world, meet an endless amount of fascinating people who just roll out the red carpet for him. And the guy checked out. He was like, you know what? I cannot be a part of this anymore. Like, what is that?
I don't know. I don't know enough about his situation. I don't know much of anything about. But even when you don't feel bad about anything that you're doing like that, there's an element of pressure that other people don't have. Like non-creatives don't have to factor in any of this stuff or feel any of that pressure ever. Like you just don't, because you probably fit really nicely with whatever role you've chosen. Like you got a job that you must be able to do because you haven't been fired. So you fit there. You do all of these things where, you know, might not be exactly what you hoped for, but you fit. Most people don't have to look around and think like, boy, does the world have a place for me? Creatives feel that pressure all the time, and most all of them deal with it just fine. A tiny little subset doesn't, but it's a thing. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's frustrating. Sorry to go on so long about this, but it's frustrated me so much that we've spent 2 years, like we meaning the like YouTube and social media ecosystem, talking about burnout. And it's actually more complex than that. There are elements of burnout that are the grind that we talk about, and that's really tough. And there are things you can do to lessen that grind. But there's some really top level, like really crazy elements, like the concept of anomie and what makes things especially hard for creators. And I haven't heard that discussion anywhere. The only time I've heard it is when you and I have talked about it. So I don't know. Well, it would be cool to know if anybody thought that was worth going into deeper in the future. I think it is. I wish YouTube would just put us on stage for like 2 hours at VidCon and have us explain the way this works to people.
Or if we could bring somebody on the show that studies this deeply, and we could interview, I would love to do that in a second. That studies anomie and or just, you know, creative brains or whatever it is, because it is, like you said, a topic that it's just ignored. It's either ignored or unrecognized, and both of those are our problem. And I think that another part of it, let me get away from creative for a second, because I think an underlying part of this problem is somebody like Nicki Minaj or whatever, who's really rich and really famous and everybody, you know, adores her or whatever, is not allowed to complain. And I've seen this on a tiny, tiny level. Like Nicki Minaj is one of the most famous people in the world. I've seen it with, you know, YouTubers that have a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the amount of fame complain about YouTube burnout, and all they receive is a bunch of people being like, well, you have like the easiest life ever. All you do is like turn on a camera in your bedroom, and, you know, that's not even a real job. You know what I'm saying? So that is to say that you're not even allowed to kind of complain about these things. So that's part of the problem. And let me steer it away from creativity for a second, because I learned something recently that I never thought of that blew my mind. My dad.
Before you say it, can I interrupt you on something?
Sure.
Because I already have. You know how PewDiePie has the pee pee poo poo kind of thing?
Yeah.
You know, pee pee poo poo, very serious thing in the Discord. I'm saying this because if I don't do the first half of that in the next 30 seconds, my chair is in serious trouble.
Oh, okay. I had no idea where you were going with that. All right. After that brief interlude, what I was going to say is I want to make a couple of points. The first point is obviously people like Andrew Luck and, Nicki Minaj are paid wonderfully for, the value that they have provided over the years. But the point is, going back to kind of like the anomie discussion, money does not solve like problems of the human condition. Having $30 million doesn't replace Nicki Minaj having a family. So like you can't buy that. So what I wanted to talk about is this story that gets us a little bit away from, creatives being unable to complain, and actually tell you this story about a really rich person having a problem that they're not allowed to complain about. But you would never know about this problem. I mean, I never would have thought of it on my own, is what I should say. So, how could I tell this without like being too explicit about who this is? So, my father spoke with a person who is really rich, okay? Like very, very, very rich. Like millions and millions and millions of dollars rich. This very rich person was remodeling one of their properties, okay?
Yep.
And it's like a public property, so everybody knows about it. It was not like their cabin in the woods. So they're remodeling this very public property. And as a part of that remodeling process, they're getting rid of, like old doors or whatever, like old furnishings. Okay.
All the stuff that comes out of a property that you would get rid of to replace all that stuff.
Yeah. They have to get rid of all that stuff to remodel. Okay. So my dad asks this person, he sees that they're just throwing it away. Okay. They're just throwing this stuff away. My dad gets upset about this because he wants it to be saved. He is an enthusiast of, antiques and like restoring old properties. He's highly into that stuff. So he asks this person, whoa, like, what are you doing? I cannot believe that you are throwing these things away. These are really, really valuable and old and beautiful. And surely there's somebody who would take them.
Yeah.
And this person said to him, yeah, but if I give it to this person, then this person complains that I didn't give it to them. And if I give it to them, then this person complains that I didn't give it to them. And if I give it to that person, so basically it's this weird thing where if you are really a rich person and you're giving your money to, or you're giving something away to somebody, it invites this weird level of vitriol and criticism because you decided to give X to this person instead of that person. And I've seen that with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, these guys who are publicly gajillionaires. And it's like, hey, Elon Musk, why aren't you, with all of your money and your resources, doing this instead of that? And that criticism is endless because any number of people can come up with any number of really important things that money would go to help solve. And it's this weird dynamic that I never would have thought of, where when you are in this position to be able to help, I don't know, helping sometimes creates more problems in a way.
On the personal level, yes. That is something that we don't really have much of a problem with, right? But like when we go to the store and we buy something that is let's say frivolous, like a bag of Doritos, which we could all live without. We don't need that thing in our life. So we go to the grocery store. All the stuff is moving on the conveyor belt and we're getting checked out. The cashier doesn't pick up that bag of Doritos and say, honestly, you're spending $3.50 on this when like kids are dying of cancer somewhere. Like nobody hassles me about that. But I see this on Twitter, and I see celebrities get criticized for doing charitable things that are kind of niche, like niche charities. You know, I don't want to like throw out a specific example, but somebody will do something. It can be as simple as this person does things for animal charities, and people will go in and say like, it's great that you're helping cats and dogs, but like, what about actual people who are dying? Why aren't you giving money to this or advocating for that? I'm like, we don't have to deal with that. It's extremely difficult. And I've known people as well who are in that same kind of position, and they kind of pull back and don't do anything, just like throwing away all that renovation stuff, because it's too hard to deal with the consequences of doing something. This stuff gets really complex when you reach a certain level. You know, I don't think a lot of people fully appreciate that. It's nuts just thinking about those unintended consequences of success. And so when you see that Nicki Minaj say, actually, I think I would prefer to have a family, or maybe she could have made that up, and the truth is that she wants to just like watch TV for 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, she's earned it. That's cool with me too. But there really are unintended consequences that people don't realize. They just don't. And we see celebrity like interaction horror stories where somebody won't want to sign an autograph or take a picture or something. And that's terrible that they don't have time for their fans. Yeah, well, they've probably been up for 19 hours and they just want to like eat their meal at this restaurant for 20 minutes, which is surely all they have, and then be on their way without, pulling up the energy to do this thing. And so it's tough. It's like, that's part of the job too. That getting into it, but it's still difficult.
Yeah, it doesn't make it not difficult. That's kind of the point, is like, yeah, it's amazing. Like, oh no, this rich person can't decide who to donate their like antiques to, like boo hoo. Like I get that. Like I fully am on board with understanding like that's, people have it a lot harder than that. The point though is that there are these weird things that crop up when you talk about the like donating to pets instead of animals and like the food stuff. I get criticism anytime I do a video on Vsauce 2 that involves food, where people think that I'm wasting the food, and it's like I eat the food just because it's in the video. Like, gosh, the potato paradox got so many comments from people, because at one point, like, I threw the potatoes on the floor just to get
brushed them off the desk, right?
Yeah, I mean, in my videos, if you watch Vsauce 2, part of the thing that I do is I do stuff on a table and then I throw it away when I'm, throw it off the table, I should say, when I'm ready to move on to the next demonstration. So when I'm demonstrating a thing with potatoes, I knock the potatoes on the floor. That doesn't mean they're bad. Like, they were still eaten. Like, the potatoes didn't like touch the floor and then, go straight into the garbage can. They were cleaned and they were consumed. But nevertheless, there were all these comments that were just like seriously furious at me for wasting like $4 worth of potatoes. For wasting $4 of potatoes. They weren't wasted, they were eaten. When, I could have, given them to somebody who needed it or whatever. And it's like, Geez Louise. Like, you're mad about something that isn't even true. Like, you just made up.
Created something. Oh, yeah, they invented that.
They totally invented
it. Like, you invented me being a terrible person, and now you're mad at this idea of me.
I don't want to make this weird connection or like equivalence on this, but what they're saying is that 17 tiny potatoes is worth more than what humanity has gotten out of this video. Like, that would be, that's the opportunity cost here that they're calculating in their head. And that is, honestly, that is just dumb. like that is so dumb to have, to think like, I don't know how many, 3 million plus views on that video. It was, say, 6-7 minutes long, 20 million minutes. That's fair. 20 million minutes, about a little over 500,000 minutes in a year. 38 years of humanity has been spent on that video. And you're telling me that's not worth 17 potatoes that you ate anyway.
100 potatoes, but yeah, still, I think that it was worth, like the $3 sack of potatoes that I used to illustrate a paradox and some fun math that, yes, like 38 years worth of humanity spent time thinking about, enjoying, and watching, but
No. You're only worth 17 potatoes. That's what it comes down to. That's what, the next time there's any negotiation or contract of any sort, I am going to insist on just whatever it is being 17 potatoes, because this man is worth 17 potatoes and the internet has told us so.
Or like when I put the book on the pizza, people freaked out about that. It was like,
oh, that was bad.
Yeah, it's like
they really went nuts.
It did not get dirty. Like, it was a hardcover book.
No.
I put it on a cold pizza. Nothing happened. The book is fine. And again, it's like your thing. It's like, is this video not worth more than a pizza stained book that nobody is reading anyway? This obscure old math text that I assure you nobody wanted except me to make this video about. And now, people are furious, around the world that I placed this obscure book that was otherwise just collecting dust in somebody's house in God knows where on a cold pizza for 2 minutes, which did 0 damage to it.
0 damage. It's not like you sacrificed the book for this pizza. And even if you had, it would have been fine.
I didn't light it on fire. I didn't start just ripping the pages out, and start eating them. Like, I placed it like politely on pizza because I thought it was funny to do. I thought, I had the pizza on the table. I didn't have any place else to put the book, so put the book on it. But instead, people get furious about that. I don't particularly know like how we got down that rabbit hole of just kind of people complaining about like projections of problems, but overall the concept of being happy and satisfied as a creator with like what you've accomplished and being able to either try something else, like Steve Martin, for example, he like plays banjo in like a bluegrass band. Like, Steve Martin's not like cranking out movies because why bother? Even though he's one of the funniest people to ever live, instead he spends his time like with his banjo band because that's what he likes to do.
I think he did a masterclass on the banjo. On banjo playing, he did one of those masterclass things that popped up for me as an ad on Facebook. But there are these things that you talk about with the project somebody really enjoys, and it's really kind of like a creative vacation. Okay. And it's when you talk about the things that these people do that are more enjoyable than what they were doing, or it's just plain what they prefer to do over the other things, whether it's Seinfeld in his Coffee and Car series, Letterman talking to people, Steve Martin playing the banjo. That's their number one choice. They're all older guys, so they can afford to do this stuff in retirement. But that's kind of like a creative vacation. They're still working, like they're still being useful in doing it. Is that because you can't ever stop?
Yes.
Like they can't stop, can they?
No. And you know what? Conan O'Brien, when he lost the Tonight Show, or I don't know how you would phrase that, when the Tonight Show with Conan just imploded in on itself, he went out on tour, and they literally made either the tour was called this or the documentary was called this or both. It was called Conan Can't Stop. That's literally what it was called, because he can't stop. Like, he just has this like little man inside his chest, like pulling the levers that causes him to have to constantly work on creating stuff all the time. And I think that's, yeah, you're right, that's just part of what makes these people tick in a way that you can't turn that off. Like you can't just flip a switch for most people. The people who have done that before, like Rick Moranis, I think is a fascinating example of this. Because Rick Moranis, I love Rick Moranis. If you're not familiar with Rick Moranis, he was one of the most successful movie comedians in the 80s. So, he started off doing kind of like bit roles. He was in Ghostbusters. He did the movie with Dave Thomas, the SCTV movie Strange Brew, where they were, the Canadians, Yehozer, like that movie. But he really blew up.
Honey, I Shrunk the
Honey,
Kids
I Shrunk
was big,
the Kids.
wasn't that?
That was, I think, he was Darth Helmet in Spaceballs. And I think Honey, the Shrunk the Kids was really like his bell cow. Like, that movie was so huge. And then they did the follow-up, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. But his wife passed away very, very young. And when that happened, he retired and he decided to raise his kids. And that was it. He was out. I think that like maybe he's released like some sort of comedic music since then, but otherwise,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think he has like some kind of album, but yeah, nobody really knows about it. He's not in anything other than that. He was just, he packed up his bag and I think just was done. So
that was a long time ago. His kids are grown. They've got to be grown by now.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you think that, it makes sense that he would assume total parent role in that situation and make that switch. But I don't know, maybe he's got grandkids or something and likes that. I haven't kept up on Moranis lore, but, I'm sure he's had opportunities to come back in the fold, and he came out at his peak. I mean, he was killing it. It's not like this happened when his career started to wane and things slowed down and he decided to just give it up. No, he was at like the highest he'd ever been. Like, he was a household name. Everybody looked at him and knew exactly who he was. You didn't even list off all of the huge things he was in. Like, people know him from Little Shop of Horrors as well. Like, he had this string of things where he was always hilarious. Life had to have been pretty good for him on the career side. But yeah, you're right. He just flipped the switch and that was that.
He's the one person I can think of that did do that. I can't think of anybody else. If the listeners can think of anybody else that flipped the switch that way and, leave a comment, or pop into Discord, I would love more examples of that, because I find that is the exception It seems like
Yeah,
really the
that's interesting.
rule is more like a Conan situation where it's like, I gotta keep doing stuff or else I don't know what to do with myself.
Can you stop? Do you think you could stop?
No, no. I think I would always have to work on I would always have to work on something. I think I would always have to work on something, whether it was, writing short stories or a comic or just honestly writing funny tweets. I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy just coming up with dumb ideas to tweet. If that was the extent of it, maybe that would satisfy me. But the fact of the matter is that like ideas just happen for me. This is my experience. Ideas happen. And if I don't do something with them, I get irritated. Like I get frustrated. And I don't know what I could compare that to for other people, but it's almost like, I don't know. It's like this itch that has to get scratched or else it'll just torment me. Even if it's just like a dumb joke that I have to tweet.
Yeah. It's great to have an outlet. Like, what would you have done 20 years ago when you couldn't tweet that to the world? You would have like sat in your room and stewed at this joke not being able to be released. It's awesome to have all that stuff now, but I think, when I was thinking, can you stop? Can anybody stop? Like, I don't think anybody has to, because I think creatives inject that kind of energy, enthusiasm, creativity, whatever it is, into virtually anything you do. Like, I think that Rick Moranis probably found a really funny way to wash the dishes, or something that like made him laugh as he was doing it. I knew people who kind of worked on logistics where every single thing they did, they liked the challenge of making it as efficient as possible. So, and this came up because of a weird way that this kid crossed the street. He took an angle that nobody else would have taken. And it was much longer than if he just crossed the street and walked down the sidewalk. And I was like, why did you do that? You were in the street for like 18 seconds. Like, well, I had to take the hypotenuse of the triangle between me, the sidewalk, and the store. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you absolutely took the most efficient path to get there. And it probably saved him 7 steps. But that was his mind doing that all the time. As goofy as it is, that's what was going through my head on the sardine thing, is that I was doing this sponsor stuff, unrelated to Create Unknown, Vsauce 2, whatever. And I was sitting there thinking, like, what would be the easiest way to work with a sponsor? And in my head, it just pops like, oh, if that sponsor didn't exist and you just made them up, they'd be really easy to work with if they were only in your head. That would be the best sponsorship in the world, because you'd be just inventing it minute by minute. And I look down and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to invent a sponsor. We're sponsored by Eagle Brand Sardines now. This is the best sponsorship deal I have ever been involved in, because I have complete control over it. So something as little and dumb as seeing some really cool patches and whatever, that process is still going for everybody, I think.
Yeah, because it's just how your brain works. I mean, that's kind of what I was alluding to with like the idea stuff. Is it's just like how my brain works. So it's like, while my brain is still working, then yeah, I probably will try to find like some way to enact the ideas that pop up. It's just, there's no choice.
I do want to ask some specifics which I think we should do on the other side of the wormhole. Okay. Because I want to know the last time you actually shut down, the last time you did turn this off, and where you would go, like on an actual vacation. If that exists, like does a vacation exist for you? Like that sounds like a stupid question. It actually isn't. It's not. It's a reality of how sometimes you can't turn off. And we have a bunch of pretty good questions on, like Andrew wanted to know some specifics about looking back on Vsauce 2, on some of your videos, which having a couple years out or even a couple days out may make you rethink some of them. And if you have rethought some of them, and Jeff had a question too about those episodes, the ones that you really liked, because some are more fun than others. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, and some I found the topic more compelling than others. So yeah, we'll hit Andrew's question. We'll hit Jeff's question. If you ever want to ask us a question, just join the Idea Baby Gang so that your idea babies can be answered on the other side of our wormhole. So unless you're joining us on the other side of the wormhole that exists at patreon.com/thecreateunknown, we will see you again next week. For everybody else, we'll see you in very, very soon. And until next time, see you, Space Cowboys.
I'll see him in the Discord in like 5 minutes. Get in the Discord and we will see you in the Discord right now.
Discord Cowboys. All right, sounds good. Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. There's more episode waiting for you, but to keep listening, sign up at patreon.com/thecreateunknown. You could hear the rest of our conversation as well as unlock the ad-free feed, get exclusive content, join the Idea Baby Gang, and more.